Hello, you're listening to Al Monitor's podcast on Israel. I'm Ben Caspit from Tel Aviv. In the next few weeks, we will know whether Benjamin Netanyahu intends to dismantle his government and drag Israel into another election, the fourth in 2 years. His government partner, Defense Minister Benny Gantz, who chairs the Blue and White Party, is a minor player in this ongoing political chaos that has left Israel without a budget for 2 years and in a state of chronic instability for far longer. This is all happening as Israel battles a renewed surge of COVID-19 infections after emerging from a national lockdown and is possibly heading for a third lockdown within weeks, which will further deepen its recession. Netanyahu, meanwhile, is putting together an impressive defense and diplomacy portfolio. His latest project was a secret visit to Saudi Arabia last week. As usual, he failed to inform his government partners or the heads of the nation's security agencies about this historic, strategically important move. Last Friday, when news broke that the head of Iran's nuclear program, Dr. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, had been assassinated, foreign intelligence officials and the Iranians themselves were quick to blame Israel's Mossad. Netanyahu himself provided a barely veiled admission saying, quote, "We had a week of hard work and many achievements. I cannot tell you about all of them." Our guest today is Orit Farkas-Hacohen, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, who was also recently named Minister of Tourism. She is a member of Gantz's Blue and White Party, a lawyer by training who headed the National Electricity Authority. She is an effective manager and an outspoken member of the government. We will ask her where Netanyahu and Gantz are leading Israel, what changes the Middle East faces under Joe Biden as president, and whether she thinks Biden intends to cool the Israeli Sunni momentum that emerged in the waning days of the Trump administration. We will also talk about Iran, about Israel's tourism in the shadow of the pandemic, and other matters as time permits. Strategic Affairs and Tourism Minister Orit Farkas-Hacohen, a member of Israel's Security Cabinet, will be with us right after this short, brief break.
If you're listening to this podcast, you obviously care about the Middle East, and if you do, you should probably be reading Al Monitor. Al Monitor is a global newsroom headquartered in Washington, D.C., with a network of over 160 contributors around the world. Al Monitor offers first-class reporting and analysis from a range of perspectives and an approach that represents the highest journalistic standards, as well as an award-winning commitment to press freedom and independence. If you haven't done so already, visit us at almonitor.com, check out our articles, and sign up for our free newsletters. There's a lot to choose from, including the Week in Review, an essay that offers unusual insights and forecasts into the region based upon Al Monitor's outstanding reporting. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our Al Monitor podcast on your favorite podcast platform, on Israel with Ben Caspit, and on the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasolidi.
Now we say shalom to Minister Orit Farkas-Hacohen, and thank you, Minister, for joining us on Al Monitor's weekly On Israel podcast. Shalom, Orit.
Shalom, good evening.
Good evening. First, I have to ask one question about the event, the actual event in Iran during the weekend. Israel is obviously keeping quiet about the assassination there near Tehran, but the New York Times is reporting that it was a Mossad operation, and Netanyahu seems to have hinted at something along those lines. So I will just ask you whether the world is a better and safer place without Dr. Fakhrizadeh.
Of course it is. Let's put it this way. Iran is an empire of terror and nuclear weapon. It works relentlessly on both levels through its proxies, the Hezbollah and the Hamas, and in another area, to push forward nuclear weapons and not for peace purposes. So every action and everything that is resulted by damaging the world that Iran can spread directly on or indirectly in each of in these areas is blessed. And I think it's a better world, both for Israel, but also for the Western world.
Okay, now let's talk a little about the renaissance that Israel is enjoying in recent months with the signing of 3 agreements of normalizing relations with the Arab or Muslim Sunni states. And I think you, as the Minister of Strategic and now also Tourism, I believe you experienced this momentum in the topics that you deal with, like the fight for Israeli legitimacy throughout the Middle East, fight against the BDS and the boycott, and other strategic issues. Did you experience this renaissance and this momentum as well?
You are totally right about the relevancy of the normalization agreements with regards to issues related with the delegitimization of the State of Israel. We have witnessed in the Ministry of Strategic Affairs a very interesting phenomenon in the social media area. We saw a very organized and financed digital campaign in the digital network on social media, targeting the Emirates and the Bahrain and all the countries that have decided to take upon the route of normalization with the State of Israel. And they were exposed to an organized campaign calling them traitors and trying to create and mispresent an atmosphere of delegitimization of the normalization agreements in the Arabic social media network, in the Arabic language. And what we have done in the ministry is we exposed this campaign to be what it is, an organized campaign financed by the Hezbollah and by other organizations and Iran, which have the incentive to try and delegitimize moderate countries who are pushing forward normalization and are confronting and don't support boycott, but rather support dialogue with Israel. So this is one thing we have done by exposing that campaign and showing that the atmosphere that this campaign tried to manipulate the social media atmosphere, we wanted to tear the mask out of this idea. Secondly, what we have done is created this strategic project within the State of Israel, harnessing the Druze community and Arabic-speaking Israelis in order to be the eyes and the ears of Israel in the Arabic language social media network. We think that Israel should focus on what's happening in the social media, which has become an haven for fake news, for misinformation, and for also delegitimization. So what we tried is going into new areas and going into the world of Arabic-speaking social media worlds. So we opened a branch of our ministry in the Julis village. It is a Druze village where we started using girls that speak Arabic to do national service for a year, looking and monitoring social media accounts in the language of Arabic in order to raise a flag if we see some, unnatural manipulation of the network, if we see some fake news with regards to Israel and hatred that is unbased. And when we see something of that kind, so we will be able to confront it, of course, with the truth and with a counter approach.
This is fascinating. I didn't know. I was not realizing that we have an embassy in Julis where young Druze girls, Arabic speaking, are trying to protect Israel from this smear campaign. And now I want to ask you, Minister Farkas Cohen, strategically speaking, about this momentum between Israel and Muslim states. Do you think it will continue after the changing of the guard in Washington, or is the Middle East about to enter a period of uncertainty and waiting for until we realize where the Biden administration is heading to?
I think it is yet to be seen. However, I do think that what started going up the surface will not be a one-phase thing. I think that the Middle East today is, or let's put it, the area where we live in the world, starting to understand and realize that Iran is a pure hazard to the moderate countries, wherever they are, and not only, and of course, then this is what we know, to the whole Western worlds and democracies. But what we see in the normalization is basically an alliance between moderate countries who do not like the monstrous terror machine called Iran and what it's doing to its proxies, such as Yemen, such as Syria, such as Lebanon, basically eating them out economically and spreading hatred and disaster even in the economic side. And in that sense, I think that it is an alliance based on many mutual things, and it is a deep, let's put it, value-based on many levels. And it is very interesting to see how the Middle East is reshaping the distribution of power, not by religions and the classic distribution, but also according to how we let's say, put ourselves or grade ourselves before a very radical and extreme terror country and empire. It is true that the new administration in the United States will have to go into a period of looking at it from the Palestinian side and from the Palestinian arguments. We know, and it's not a secret, that the Palestinian Authority was very unsupportive of the normalization agreements. But again, I think it's totally a misperception and a missed opportunities on their side, because I think that, as much as Israel will spread its allies and the countries which she's making business with and having dialogue with, then even the Palestinian issues will have more and more, routes of communication and more opportunities to think of creative ideas and networks to re-enlight the dialogue.
Okay, now I want to talk a little about the Biden's upcoming administration. Israel was addicted in the last 4 years to the very, very friendly President Trump in an unprecedented margin, and now we have to adapt to a new era without the best ever friend in the White House. After all, while his successor, President-elect Biden, is a friend of Israel, the Democratic Party has a few parts of radical or maybe progressive or radical parts. And what do you plan in the government, and specifically you in the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, to do in order to minimize the influence of these radical parts of the Democratic Party?
Regarding this issue, I know that everybody's saying that the support for America of Israel is, undeniable, bipartisan, and so on and so on. But the truth needs to be said, and the truth is that it is no secret that the current Israeli administration put all his balls on the Republican administration. And in my personal view, in a way, didn't put enough effort and attention to the democratic side of the political American system. On the personal note, being a parliament member previously and being a minister, I put some personal effort connecting with Democratic Congress people and Senate members in the United States, because I saw it something that we as Israeli, or me and Israeli, has an obligation to do, because just like the Israeli society is not made of one color, but of people who are more conservative, who are more restrained, and on the other side, and as people who are more liberal and more progressive. The same thing is true about the American society. And in that sense, we should connect to all the colors of the political range in the United States. So first of all, on the personal level, I don't want to mention names, but I did like a series of introduction and conversation and Zoom initiatives with several democratic people in the United States. And I must tell you that they were very happy about this initiative, and they thought, that it indeed is something that I felt that they felt was missing. Secondly, with regards to the ministry, it's the same thing. I think that as a minister, that is responsible for enhancing the legitimization of the state of Israel, it is not only about convincing the convinced, and it is not about talking again and again to the same public. So in that sense, we're also initiating all kind of ways to connect with new publics, with new organization, even more liberals, and not only the pro-Israeli organizations, as we call them in the ministry. And this is one of the things. We just issued a paper by the ministry calling out for different organizations to come and get some assistance with regards of all kind of projects that they want to do. And that paper says that according to my policy, the budget will be given with a priority to organizations that represent new publics that we didn't work with before. And secondly, to public that work with the social media or have tools that can be effective on monitoring, misuse of the digital platforms. Because again, that is another second thing that I think that is a challenge especially with the COVID-19 and with a highly dependent of the public opinion on what we see on social media.
It's interesting. I have a follow-up question. If you're talking about, thinking or acting outside of the box, will you, as a Minister of Tourism, consider maybe inviting congresswomen, radical and progressive congresswomen like Ilhan Omar or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to see Israel in their own eyes before they decide if you belong to the good or the bad side?
It is funny that you're asking that, because I didn't really think about it with regards to being the tourism minister. As you know, we are just coming out of the second lockdown in Israel. So what I'm doing is I'm
preparing you to this job now.
Exactly. So my work in the tourism ministries in the first month of my term has been concentrated really in giving some oxygen to this wonderful industry in Israel, making sure that hotels in Israel will get back to operation. But it's interesting issue that you raised, because I did address this in the ministry. One of the first things that I have done when entering the Ministry of Strategic Affairs was I assigned the general director of the ministry, Ronen Manelis, who's done an amazing work in the ministry, and I have given him a mission to look retrospectively and to see if we should adapt Israel's policy with regard not allowing people who support BDS, who are active in BDS organization, to do this kind of, a retro inspection of what is the best policy for Israel to take place. Was, for example, the banning and not allowing some American politician to go into the state of Israel due to their being a BDS activist? Was it effective? Was it not effective? Do we have something to learn after 2 years of implementing a mechanism that was put in place before my term, and to see what's the balance between the damage and what's the pros and cons for that? And this work was actually done and was presented to me. And what it says that we need to be very careful when it comes to politicians or people who are holding, public positions or academic positions. And if you're talking about my personal view should be that the refuse to give people entrance to the state of Israel should be a last resort, because I think it is not, it is not something that should be used lightly, but only in extreme cases. And I think that I don't remember the name at the moment, but I think that the only time I had to address one of the cases during my term, I actually reversed a decision taken by the previous minister, Ardan, and decided to approve an entrance of a previously refused woman. She said she's not active anymore. She still criticizes Israel and still has very hard criticism. But in my view, a criticism alone, and even if it's a hard one, within the realms of freedom of speech, is not an excuse to ban a person from going into the country.
If it will happen and you will personally host AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I want to be the fly in the room and listen to this interesting conversation between two very impressive women. Now let's dive into Israeli politics. Did Benjamin Netanyahu cheated Benny Gantz? Because we are heading maybe fourth election in a row. There will be no rotation between the PMs in November. And do you think you made a strategic mistake with blue and white coming and giving Netanyahu the keys to another government without getting the goods?
So for the benefit of your listeners, I don't know if they are all acquainted with the mechanism, the political mechanism in Israel. According to the law in Israel, once you do not conclude the state budget in a timely manner, a time that is set by law, then the parliament is being dispersed. This is a legal sanction that was put in place in order for the leaders of the country to understand that a budget is a very fundamental and important tool for a state to be managed correctly. So what we are now in a junction where the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is trying to use this unfortunate technique and he refuses to pass the budget for nearly a year, with the intention that once there isn't a budget, the parliament will disperse and he will be able to drag the Israeli people to a fourth election in a row in 2 years, just so that he will be able to conduct and assemble his let's put it, his dream government or cabinet that will give him the legislation to create a personal immunity from his 3 pending indictments. Now, for your first question, no, I'm totally not regretting the fact that I joined the Blue and White Party, fighting the current leadership and preaching for integrity in leadership. The Blue and White Party came and was established because of what we see in Israel. We see a leader that has been in power too many years. In Israel, unfortunately, we do not have a limitation on the term of prime minister. And in my personal view, this is like a Kennedy School test case to be studied. What happens when a prime minister doesn't have a term limitation and unfortunately doesn't want to leave the chair? We came in order to fight this. And unfortunately, after 3 elections in a row, we didn't get the decisive result that made it possible for us to assemble a government without the Likud party and without Benjamin Netanyahu. So in these complicated circumstances, followed by the international crisis and unprecedented crisis of the COVID-19, we decided to be responsible, to do what every normal person would have done, and to go into a unity government. And on our side, the big compromise was that we would do a unity, we would do like a shuffle and an agreement that part of the time Netanyahu would be a prime minister, but after the second part of the government, he would go off and take care of his criminal files. And that would be, a compromise that we could live along with our values. But like you said, unfortunately, Netanyahu found a loophole in the agreement, and now he's abusing it. And all I can say is that, no, I do not regret joining the Blue and White Party. I will never regret being a person, just like Benny Gantz, who thinks people should respect agreements, who believe that people respect agreements, and educating my kids for the same values. And I think it is, sorrow, and the shame is on our prime minister that instead of putting, national interest first, he doesn't care about dragging Israel to yet another elections, spending all that money on, really election that has no purpose and serve no purpose rather than himself, and trying to get, another, and trying to create yet another government that maybe will give him the immunity he's seeking.
Do you think there is still a chance for a compromise, or maybe I'll ask it in a different way? If Benny Gantz will consult you and ask you, should I give Netanyahu another 2 or 3 or 1 month after the ultimatum, the deadline on December 23rd, will you advise him, let's give it another chance? Or do you think that Blue and White have to stand beside its terms if the budget is not accepted in the Knesset? I'm talking about 2021 budget. Until the end of December, let's go to the voter.
I want to be straightforward. On the economic level, being somebody with an economic background, I think it is totally a disgrace. The fact that the state of Israel doesn't have a budget is an unprecedented situation in all the world with the COVID-19. It says we do not have a solid economic program. So it is a total disgrace. On the political level, I'm among the very militant voices with regards to that. To tell you the truth, if the Likud will come with such a suggestion saying we need 1 more month, and a week, I would like to see guarantees. I don't care anymore about talking about making the budget or saying about presenting it to the cabinet. When we're talking about budget, it needs to be approved in the parliament. Anything else is, sorry about my language, but it's a BS. So that would be my approach.
Okay, let's say we're almost out of time, but I still have another 2 issues to talk to you about. First, you mentioned before the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus that hit Israel very hard. Right now, we are trying to get out from the second lockdown and already are talking about the third one, maybe in upcoming Hanukkah holiday. Do you think that the government is failing to deal with the COVID-19 crisis? I'm talking about the health issue and the economic issue as well.
I think it's a complicated question, and I will divide it to the health side and to the economic side. With regards to the economic side, yes, I have a lot of criticism. I think that the Israeli Health Administration is very narrow-minded, and if I would ask them, I think they would rather have all of Israel sitting at home until a vaccine is operational. They see themselves as committed to saving lives, and that's it. When I joined the Corona Cabinet, which is a specific COVID-19 cabinet that the State of Israel assembled according to the Blue and White Party, and I came there as a tourism ministry, fighting the fight of the village hotels, the village tourism, the rural tourism. And there I put an argument, and I said, how come you do not measure the health damage or the mental damage? Health is not only about how many COVID-19 people are admitted in hospital, not only how many people were found positive, it is also about how many people experience a stress and suicidal attempts because of their economic disaster. And we know from the data that I collected that there is a double amount of people calling stress centers, the telephone centers that are aiding people. There is a 30% increase in taking stress medical medicines. 10% of the people will be getting mental aid after the COVID-19. And this is was even estimated in several billions of dollars at the moment, shekels, sorry. So, I come from an economic world, from the energy world, and I remember all the examination when we were pricing, for example, the price of the damage of using electricity from coal. You can't take into consideration the direct price of coal, right? Because coal is very cheap. You have to put inside the externalities, the diseases that are the result of the pollution of the coal and so on, and the amount of money you will take out of the sick people and so on. And I said in the Corona Cabinet the same. I think that the way that the medical side in Israel, the medical administration should assess the damages of the medical disease are very, very flat, and it should be much more complicated, and they should bring, mental health people to the staff of the Corona staff. Nobody's there. So this is one thing. Secondly, as a person on the economical level, I think that we must learn to live with COVID-19. I can't stand it to see articles about people who commit suicide because of their businesses. And I am pushing, and actually all of the Blue and White Party is pushing more and more for an differentiating attitude, meaning looking at the country not as a whole, but differentiating the green cities, which means the disease-free cities from the red areas, the more infected areas, and to work with discipline. And in that sense, I think that we're starting to go on the right direction. On the Ministry of Tourism, we did this experience of opening 50% of the internal tourism in the tourism islands, both in the south of the country, in Eilat, and both in the Dead Sea. We created these islands where people come only with negative results of the COVID-19. Yeah. And I think this is the way to work, to find creative ways to monitor the disease and to open more and more businesses. Yeah.
This is Minister Farkach Cohen. Also, my last question, and I really need now a very brief answer because we are long past our limit of time, but it's so interesting. So we go on about tourism. Israel has very, very famous sites to all three religions, the big three religions, and still we are not close to fulfill our potential in tourism, how can Israel be more competitive and bring many more tourists here after, of course, the COVID-19 crisis? Do you have any new ideas on this issue?
Actually, I do. When I come to a minister after the previous minister, Yariv Levin, who was a great minister, who thought that marketing is the answer for the Israeli tourism. I come from the infrastructure world, and I was amazed to see that the Ministry of Tourism, which has resources, direct and indirect, of billions of shekels, doesn't have a strategic plan of developing of tourism of the tourism of Israel, doesn't have a strategic plan with regards to areas of Israel, developing the Kinneret, developing the product of the Galilee, creating a tourism product of the desert, and so on and so on. The way it works is that it is a mechanism that is reactive. Each head of a municipality comes to you and asks for some of money for a local project. And I passed a cabinet resolution saying that I need now to prepare a strategic plan. And I think that once the infrastructure and the thinking of the tourism product will be more organized in a strategic way, we can work more effectively, and then market, specific products. We have deserts, we have snow, we have the most amazing religious places in the world. We are full of history and modern places at the same time. That's what amazing about the state of Israel. And also the normalization agreements with the opening of new tourists from the Emirates and from other countries. I think that we will be open to many, many opportunities after the COVID-19.
Minister Orit Farkashe-Cohen, I could go and talk to you long, maybe 2 more hours, but we are out of time. It was fascinating. I thank you very much for joining us here on Israel in Al Monitor. We will now take the last short break and come back with some final thoughts. And again, Toda Rabba, Shalom, Minister Orit Farkashe-Cohen.
I'm Andrew Parasiliti, president of the award-winning media news site El Monitor, where we cover the Middle East with some of the best reporters and columnists anywhere. And I'm excited to announce our new podcast on the Middle East, where each week I will interview newsmakers from the U.S. and the region about the latest news and trends with additional commentary from our on-the-ground correspondents. Those of you who follow the region know that what happens in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. And to cite another great movie line, every time the U.S. tries to get out, the region pulls us back. Your time is valuable, so let me promise you this. You will learn something and you will never be bored, because each week we'll be talking with and listening to those leaders who are making the news and shaping the trends in this critical and fascinating region. So please subscribe to On the Middle East with me, Andrew Parasiliti.
Thank you for staying with us. The point that was most intriguing and interesting for me in this fascinating conversation with Minister Orit Farkashe-Cohen was when we were talking about the Israeli ongoing battle against the BDS movement, the Israeli international legitimacy around the world, etc. And the minister who is dealing exactly with these issues said, it's about time that Israel will not try to convince the convinced, but try to get out of the paradigm or think outside of the box, etc. And then I asked her about maybe considering inviting Congresswoman Ilhan Omar or Congresswoman AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to Israel, to see Israel with their own eyes. And the minister did not rule it out. She said that we, Israel, have to check the benefits of such a move and to be very careful with politicians because there is a lot of benefits, but also a price to pay. But banning leaders or politicians from entering into Israel should be the last resort, and it's very interesting. Orit Farkas-Cohen hopes that a miracle can still happen and a compromise, a political compromise, will be found to avoid the fourth election in Israel. She is criticizing Prime Minister Netanyahu that, in her words, is trying to use the budget in order to drag the nation to these fourth election in the midst of the health and economic crisis. She's not sorry for joining Blue and White or politics, and also not sorry for her party joining the unity government. She's saying there is still hope yet to come. And we will, of course, follow it very closely, and I hope you enjoyed it today. We will see you here next Monday in On Israel and Al Monitor. I'm Ben Caspit from Tel Aviv. Take care.